Today, I'm gonna rank the best niches to start a channel in 2024 alongside Seth Fowler and Vexian.
Yeah, my name is Seth. I'm a YouTube consultant working predominantly in gaming. I've worked with some of the largest creators in the space, as well as Red Bull Gaming, bringing their brand to a more Gen Z audience, and have generated hundreds of millions of views on the platform.
My name is Vexian. I've been a YouTube strategist and consultant for 6 years. I've helped my clients gain over 1 billion views on the platform and generated them millions in revenue. And I'm happy to be joined today by Seth and Nate.
Whether you already have a channel or are thinking about starting one, our rankings will help you pick the niche where you'll be most successful. Starting with, first niche is travel. To be honest, for me, travel goes pretty low simply because the cost to actually get in is very, very high.
So travel is pretty difficult. And if you're a new YouTuber starting out, I don't think it makes sense at all to do travel. And if you are interested in travel, and if you live in a big city, I think you should start with city-based content first, which is kind of similar to travel in terms of your audience, and then use that to parlay into travel once you start making money from it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm honestly leaning towards D simply because a plane ticket's not cheap.
Yeah, I think that's safe.
Okay, cool. Next niche. I'm going to give soccer a big fat F simply because with soccer, yes, ton of people can watch your stuff. There's unlimited content to make things about because games are being played every weekend. However, copyright is the worst part of this niche. I would put it in F.
I think it's a massive pain, but if you're able to master it, I think it's a massively not only profitable niche, but also that the view ceiling is so high. But I would say overall, I would still put it in D tier. I don't think it's an F. I think D is fair.
Next up, self-improvement. For me, it goes in the middle. There's a lot of potential, obviously. There's a very, very high view ceiling, but at the same time, so many people are doing it, and most people are not unique enough to really stand out. So again, for me, it's a C.
I think a lot of the channels and the creators who go into self-improvement nowadays are basically regurgitating the same kind of information. They don't really have the longevity because the polarizing takes eventually lose their edge, and people are looking for genuine advice rather than just you saying something outlandish to get clicks.
I think self-improvement is A/S, and here's why. You guys bring up a good point where it's like everything is regurgitated, but we're seeing kind of a resurgence in authenticity on YouTube. So you could basically be any person and have like self-improvement advice that's like specific to your group of people. So in that case, I actually think there's a lot of room to grow in self-improvement. It's just knowing what you want to do and not regurgitating what other people are doing, but being yourself and focusing on your target demographic that have like interest to you.
Okay, self-improvement, B. Next up is cars. I'm gonna be honest, I know nothing about cars. I know a lot of people that have automation channels in cars. Do you guys have anything to weigh in on that?
There are lots of subsections of cars. So the ones I've seen perform the best were around, but I think around cars, old cars, classic cars, how cars work, the origins of businesses and kind of car brands is definitely a very viable source of content. And there's a lot to talk about. But I think once you start to go past the kind of very top of the funnel generic stuff that people would actually care about or a broad audience would care about, and you start talking about how engines work and all those kind of more niche things, you then start to limit that view ceiling and it comes down and down and down.
Man, I like the car niche a lot. And the reason why I like it versus travel, both of which can be kind of high capital intensive niches, is that, you know, the likelihood is a lot of people still have their first car, right? So you have car modification, you have racing, you have flipping, you have repairing, right? There's a lot of advantages to doing the car content. There's a lot of ways you can be personable with it. You can be a car expert talking about how to repair it. You can also just take your viewers on a journey of you learning how to race or even road trips. There's so many interesting car things, and also cars have like a very intrinsic story. But if you can get past that or you can work around it, it's definitely an A tier niche for sure.
Okay, we can throw it in A. I think that's good. All right, next, gaming. I'm gonna let you guys talk and then I'll tell you what I think.
I think gaming is an S tier niche. I think there's an infinite number of games, there's an infinite number of audiences, and there's an infinite number of ways to approach certain topics, ideas. I've worked with gaming creators for the last 6 years, and I've amassed nearly 1 billion views with just in the gaming niche alone. And there's just tried and true methods that work. It's very repeatable. You can pivot very easily out. And then once you have that experience as a YouTuber in the gaming niche, and let's say your game dies, it gets unsupported, it's very easy to switch to another game and build an audience from scratch. There's also off-platform monetization that you can do with courses, with private discords and things like that. Merchandise is quite well. And some of the biggest YouTubers today came from gaming years ago. And some of of the biggest YouTubers of all time are gaming YouTubers.
Yeah, agree with you there. I would throw it in S tier as well, simply because there's definitely a lot of potential, tons of creativity, very, very easy to start, and a humongous view ceiling, and a lot of room for people to innovate and not just do what everybody else is doing. So for me, gaming goes S tier as well.
I would agree that I would also put it in S. And just to kind of elaborate more on Vex's first point about it being very monetizable, maybe the RPMs aren't as good as some other niches, but your ability to monetize your audience is probably a lot easier than it is in other niches.
Awesome. Yeah, S tier is good for that. Next, crypto. Crypto is a very interesting one.
Crypto in the long term is definitely going to come back into kind of popularity, but for now I would probably give it a C if I was being honest. I don't think right now it's a great niche to get into.
Yeah, I would honestly throw it in D. Crypto is also very, very complex on its own, so you do have to have that prior knowledge, and you do need to compete with the best, and the best are doing crazy amounts of work. So for me, it goes D tier simply because of all of those downsides. Next is cooking. So cooking can be a ton of different things, right? I think there's a lot of room for experimentation, taking things from other niches that have adjacent audiences. There's a very, very low barrier of entry. Everybody has food in their house for the most part. A lot of people cook. It's very easy to learn how to cook as well. So for me, it goes A tier simply because there's a lot of room for growth in that niche.
I think cooking is really good. Like, yeah, I think cooking makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of creativity in there. It's actually something that I'll be working on very soon, as I plan to reach out to some cooking channels, because I think there's a lot of space to improve the niche. I think you even brought that up. So hey, 100%.
Cooking has definitely been at the forefront of my mind in terms of a YouTube niche for a little while, and you can go into it into so many angles. You can either target younger audiences, you can target more mature audiences, because there are always people who are looking for, especially with kind of the cost of living in a lot of countries, there are people looking for easily accessible meals and different ways to create food in a budget.
Yeah, Vex, you okay with it going in S? Because honestly, I do think it's way better than Cars.
Yeah, I think it's way better than Cars too, just because of the fact that it's not cost prohibitive, and then there's so many different things. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's a lot like gaming in that regard.
Music. So music is like people playing instruments. I guess even music videos.
I would give it a B or an A. I think in the faceless industry, there's a lot of opportunity to go into music, and there's obviously hundreds and thousands of stories of the backstories behind artists or different controversies and everything like that. So I think it's, like you said, it's a low barrier to entry, and there's a lot of content to be made.
I'd give it a B. I think it depends on how good you are at music, right? Some people aren't gonna make it, but I think if you are an artist, there's never been a better time in history to have a platform that works in your favor and helps you get your music and your art out there. So for that reason, I think it's B tier.
Okay, cool. I'm good with B. DDG started on YouTube. Now he's like millionaire. All right, arts and crafts, I'm going to put at A or S simply because there's a ton of stuff you can carry over from other niches. Very similar to cooking for me, and very, very low barrier of entry, very, very high view ceiling.
Yep, I would agree. I haven't worked with an arts and crafts channel personally, but like you said, there's so many different avenues you can go down. There's almost an infinite amount of ideas that you can create content from. So yeah, I would agree. S tier is a good ranking.
Next up, tech. Vex, do you want to take that one?
I love tech. I ran tech channels in the past, both faceless and face tech channels. A lot of really good stuff, very easy to do, lots of news, lots of things to talk about. And also it really comes down to your personality and what topics you want to cover. You can go super niche with super nerdy stuff, or you can go kind of more broad, like an Linus Tech Tips or MKBHD. So again, there's a lot of things you can do. I think it's A tier just because you don't actually necessarily need a lot of equipment, but if you do, you can definitely make some S tier content. But with that being said, I think A tier is probably pretty good for tech. It has the same appeal as Cars in my opinion.
I've definitely dabbled with the idea of creating a technology channel just because there's so many avenues you can go down. I would also include AI, the kind of AI progression is under that tech bubble. And I think especially in 2024 and 2023, AI has come to the forefront of a lot of people's minds. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to create content and a massive view ceiling that will only continue to grow year after year.
And speaking of AI, let me introduce you to an AI tool that I've actually integrated into my YouTube workflow, Taja AI. Taja is an AI-powered metadata specialist for YouTubers that allows you to generate titles, descriptions, chapters, tags, and and even thumbnail ideas with just the click of a button. For me, it has two huge benefits. The first is the time that it saves me. For my personal channel and our clients, I'm used to having to manually enter long-winded descriptions and write out my own chapters. Taja takes this incredibly boring task that takes a lot longer than it should sometimes and cuts it down to just 5 seconds of clicking a button and getting instant results. The second upside for me is its ability to dramatically improve SEO with, again, just the click of a button by auto-generating tags and descriptions that optimize for my video's SEO. SEO is never going to be the difference between a video blowing up like crazy and flopping, but for videos with the potential for high traffic from search, like a how-to tutorial or a super relevant topic getting lots of search traction at a given moment, it can be a huge extra boost in views. And with Taja, this is possible to do without any extensive keyword research, prior YouTube knowledge, or trying to read your horoscope to figure out what search terms will be popular and relevant to your audience at the time of publishing. All it takes is one click of a button, so if this sounds interesting to you, then check out Taja with the link in my description to apply it to your workflow too. Anyway, Lego, I want to put A tier simply because there's a lot of room to do different things. And there's honestly, Lego has just so many formats you can take. Very, very low barrier of entry. Lots of people already have Legos and there's a lot of room for creativity. So for me, it goes either A or B.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who's worked in the Lego niche, I can agree. There's just so many different verticals of content. You can build it. You can do tutorials. You can make some automated stuff as well. There's a lot of interesting modalities to it as well in terms of how it's consumed. So for that reason, I'll probably be putting it in A. I think there's a lot you can do and there's a lot of creativity. Yeah,
creativity in 2024 is going to be honestly a way bigger focus than anything related to your video's execution. Stop motion Lego, I can see being just very, very good opportunity for 2024. Personally, I would agree with you guys. So game dev, I actually started in game dev. Game dev has a very, very high view ceiling if you know what you're doing. There's a lot of room for the back end. There's also a lot of room to bring over, stuff from other videos, more entertainment-based niches. Live streaming is another thing. Downside is game dev is very, very hard. When I did game dev, I would publish every 2 months because to make a good video, you have to make a good game. So for me, game dev goes in either probably B simply because game dev is just really, really hard if you're not already a game dev.
There's a huge curiosity gap because I feel like a lot of people play games, but a lot of people are also curious about how they're created and kind of the back end analytics and all the data and the process that goes into developing a game. So I think for that reason, there's a massive, even if you have no experience coding or developing games, there's still a massive audience that would be willing to consume that kind of content. So I would personally put it in A.
Agreed. Start with motivation. One of you guys can go first.
I think motivation is probably going to be like a C or a D tier. It has the benefits of self-improvement, but it's just, you're never going to have a stable audience, I don't think it's good content anyway, and I think most people kind of forget about it. They see one video and then they'll never see another one again.
Yeah, I would say D as well. I would consider it a sub-niche of self-improvement being motivation.
Yeah, a lot of motivation videos are just reused content, so for me it goes in D as well. Next, let's go to coding.
I think coding is going to be probably A tier. It's got the same, intricacies as game dev. It's super interesting. It's super easily to monetize as well. If you build like an app or something like that, or even a course, I like it a lot. I think it might be slightly less interesting than game dev, but I think there might be a wider audience for coding because it's been around, I think, a little bit longer than game dev.
I agree for the most part, but I would actually maybe disagree in terms of the view ceiling for coding being higher than gaming, but I'd probably put it in C.
I would throw it in B simply because same opportunities for you to bring stuff over in other niches. There is a lot of potential. You do have to learn how to code. All right, next, geography. I want to put geography personally in A. What do you think about geography?
Definitely a very strong niche, especially in faceless content, just because there's so many subsections of geography. So you could talk about things like war, you could talk about things like culture, you could talk about things like the physics of the earth. There are so many different things that come under that geography niche, and it has a massive view ceiling. The only downside, I think, is to stand out in the geography niche, you need either you need great research and you need a great script and great information that isn't previously kind of known broadly. And editing as well. So I would say B tier. I would say B.
For me, it's C. Vex, what do you think?
Man, geography is an interesting one. I like it. I don't like it. I think there's kind of a high barrier to entry because you have to be knowledgeable. I'm gonna put it C just because, you know, there's some geography stuff that works. I think, you know, I'm not gonna get into the nitty gritty, but like I only know 2 or 3 big geography channels, and I see a bunch of ones that just keep failing over and over again. So for that reason, I'm gonna go put it in C.
News, I honestly don't know where to throw this. News can be like current events. For me, current events goes in either C or D, simply because you can make a lot of people mad, and when you make a lot of people mad, you decrease the potential for views, obviously, even if the view ceiling is initially very, very high. But what do you guys think?
News has a very, very shelf life. I think people move from story to story so fast that unless you are covering stories that have a lot of people care about them in a short space of time, then you're limiting your view ceiling considerably. Whereas telling broader stories that are more evergreen, that aren't just around a certain topic, is probably a better way to structure or go at that kind of channel.
I don't necessarily mind it being polarizing, the news, but it is just a little bit rough. It's hard to do, and like you actually have to be knowledgeable of current events and what's going on. And then the market is only ever going to be there for around 72 hours maximum from the event. So for that reason, C tier I think is probably good, maybe even D.
Yeah, you're also competing with big news outlets that are doing it better than you. I would put politics in D, building off of that, just because you have to be polarizing to do politics, and you're immediately eliminating half, if not more, of your potential audience of news. So it has to be worse than news for me.
I think you can run into a lot of blocks with copyright and things like that when you're being polarizing or covering controversial topics. So I would avoid it.
That too, demonetization can be crazy if you're being too controversial. NBA, NFL, MLB, basically American sports, throw that down with soccer because same copyright issues.
Yeah, I would say so. I think from what I've seen, American sports can be a lot more monetizable than European sports, and the NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB is mainly an American audience, so you kind of get a nicer chunk of change from ad revenue alone. So for that reason, I would probably put it in C above soccer at least.
Are you putting C instead of D?
I mean, as an American, right? You know, these are better sports leagues than soccer anyway. I would probably agree with C. I think there's a lot more interesting stuff. I mean, some of my favorite channels are NBA channels, like GOAT. That guy's like prolific. He's an automated faceless guy, but makes some pretty good content. And then obviously Jimmy High Roller has arguably some of, if not the highest quality content in the niche, and maybe even on YouTube in general.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. Next, sports. Sports being like Dude Perfect or like Trick Shots or just like Rodashaw when he was making content, or even, I don't know, like soccer channels like F2 Freestylers.
I really like sports. Like you said, F2 Freestylers, you've got Chris MD in England who's doing some incredibly impressive views. I think it has all the benefits of being able to hit that wider market, which is football or NFL or whatever that may be, without running into those copyright issues.
Yeah, I work with a sports creator. I really like working with him. I think it's definitely an A or S tier thing. Like you said, it has the upside of having that total addressable market from that specific sports niche, but not the downsides of copyright. And it is also incredibly monetizable. There's a lot of great ad deals, especially. And then the audience connection you have is pretty good, and anyone can do it, right? Even if you're like below average, you can make a whole channel about getting better at a sport and becoming above average, right? And there's so many niche sports too that are underserved. I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's easily A tier, maybe even S tier, depending on who you ask.
Being athletic, part of it's, natural talent, the other part of it's hard work, but it takes a lot more hard work to become very, very athletic, fit, good at a sport versus being entertaining or making good videos. So for me, it goes S. Anyone can do this. Next, we have finance. Finance is a tough one for me. I honestly put it C or D simply because to do well in the finance niche, you need a lot of social proof, which simply most people do not have.
99% of finance creators are kind of preaching how to make X amount of money or how to be the top 1% of people when they're nowhere near close to that themselves. I think there's a lot of bad actors, and like you said, it's reliant on social proof, and a lot of times there have been people who have blown up who at the time of creating the videos were nowhere near that making X amount of money that they claimed they were, and then it's only later after they've got all of these views that they're somewhere close. So I would give it a C probably.
Yeah, so I love the finance niche, actually, more so than crypto, but I think finance is overall good. It definitely can be bad. There are bad actors. I think it is like kind of a B tier niche. I think if you are an expert, I prefer it to be B. It is kind of like that self-improvement thing. It's just kind of a different vertical of self-improvement.
Yeah, agree there. All right, this next one, YouTube education.
Well, we all run YouTube education channels to some extent. I dislike YouTube education as a YouTube strategist. I don't love it. The quality of viewer is actually a lot lower than you would really expect. The audience will leverage the fact that, oh, you're not getting views because you're a YouTube educator. So it's a very hostile environment in that way.
Yep.
So like, you know, it is not easy, and I don't necessarily like it for that reason. I'll honestly like put it in like C or D. I'm almost even leaning towards D. And again, like you really have no business doing a YouTube education channel unless you have skin in the game. All of us here run successful channels, have like massive client portfolios, right? So like if you don't have the bare minimum of that, I definitely think you probably don't want to be doing it. I just don't think you should be doing it.
Yeah, I think even the viewership ceiling is a lot lower than a lot of people would think, unless you're one of the kind of big players in the game. There's also a lot of people who make YouTube education channels who don't know what on earth they're talking about, which kind of makes it hard to differentiate the people who do know what they're talking about to the people who don't.
Yeah, agree with both of you guys. YouTube education is a very, very hostile environment. If it's your first channel, chances are you do not know enough about YouTube to get into YouTube education. Preach that you know what you're talking about, because you don't. You learn by doing, and if you haven't done, you don't know, simply, right? Other thing too, RPMs are actually very, very low. So if your goal is ad rev, this is not the way to go. On the back end, if you are looking to use a channel like this to, you know, improve your client base, it is very, very good. Honestly, I've seen great success with that. However, it's very, very hostile. View ceiling is very, very low. There's not new information, so it's on you to find unique angles to make videos. So for me, it goes, honestly, D tier. Next, entertainment. So entertainment is basically encompassing, you know, the Mr. Beast.
I think Mr. Beast has definitely pioneered the entertainment space. Whether that's a good thing or bad thing is definitely up for debate. I think creators like Matt Beam, for example, are a good case study for someone who has kind of taken the fundamentals of Mr. Beast and the strengths behind his content and kind of emulated it extremely well. But overall, I would say that creators like the Sidemen, I would say the very old FaZe Clan all comes under entertainment, kind of challenges, kind of in-person things that can range from cooking to doing challenges to kind of basically anything is entertainment.
I mean, it's really hard. In the sense that not even like the editing or the production or even the ideas, it's just that some people I don't think have the personality for it, right? And you can definitely train that personality up, but like, you know, I'm not gonna be the type of guy to go, hey, what's going on, guys? Today I bought 10 Lamborghinis, I'll be giving them away to 10 subscribers. Like, it's just not gonna work, right?
Yeah, for me, very, very high barrier of entry if you really want to compete with the top even 10%, because there are always going to be people like Mr. Beast who, you know, no matter how impressive your video is, they're going to give away a Lambo and just blow yours out of the water. For me, it goes C. It can be really, really fun to do. I actually had to do like a fake Mr. Beast video for a video that I did on this channel. It's a little bit weird. Was pretty weird, but it was fun to film, honestly. So I'd agree with you guys and throw that in C. Next up is story time. So think like the odd ones out, or just like someone talking straight to their camera. For me, I think, again, authenticity will reign supreme on YouTube in 2024. But also, unless you are not, if you're not a very interesting person, then you're obviously not going to have stories to tell. For me, it goes like, honestly, probably B.
There are a lot of channels in multiple different niches. So for example, my girlfriend actually watches and was watching this earlier today, and I had no idea what she was watching, but it was somebody doing their makeup and then telling a story that wasn't theirs about a crime. And you can kind of do that with so many different niches. You can tell stories about crime, you can tell stories about sport, you can tell stories about cars, and people kind of just want that sit down genuine feel where they can put a video on and someone tells them a story. It's definitely preference, but you can start to kind of connect with that creator, and it can kind of become your comfort YouTuber.
I like storytime stuff. I think it's great. I mean, dude, look at 2015 to 2017. We had 2 years of great storytime YouTubers. The storytime stuff is like really big. It's really crucial for a lot of people, and I think it fills a pretty big need in most audiences, especially with like an age demographic of like 16 to 24. I think it's super useful. And I mean, if you just have interesting stories to tell, people will listen to them. That's kind of why podcasts are massive, right? Because it's just interesting people talking about interesting things. So I'm a big fan of the storytime niche. It just depends on how interesting your life is and those stories are, and how interesting you can make them. So for that reason, I'm going to say it's definitively A tier.
Storytime, throw that in A. Next, I actually want to pose an interesting one, body cam. So body cam channels have popped up a ton in the past couple of years. For me, this goes either D or F, simply because it's very, very saturated, no matter how good of a body cam video you make, anybody can just go and blatantly copy you because it's not your footage. Definitely D or F in my book.
It's very hard to create original content without somebody copying you. It feels like every single body cam video is the same, and with it being so saturated, it's hard to establish a footing in the niche without having a pre-existing audience.
Yeah, I mean, here's the reality of the body cam thing is like, yeah, you know, you don't really have a moat because they're all very similar and anyone can copy it. But here's the thing that a lot of people don't really understand about the body cam niche and like the crime stories niche in general is that like the guys that you're competing against are the best of the best.
F, do not make body cam videos. You're not going to make it no matter how much you think you will. It's not easy. So this next one, movies and TV. So when I say movies and TV, pretty much reviewing movies, reviewing like anime recap sort of thing. For me, this goes D, simply because copyright is such a huge issue with it. And unless you're making yourself a huge part of it, it's very difficult to stand out because anyone can review a movie. Who really cares what you have to say unless you're entertaining? For me, goes probably D, if not honestly F in some cases.
So I definitely think there is something there in the long term. But if you're an English native speaker, it is really kind of rough to get your point in. And even if you have differing opinions, there's also probably already 2 or 3 other YouTubers who have the same differing opinions. It's not a high barrier to entry necessarily, but it is difficult to kind of breach that moat and get a new audience, depending on what your talking points are. So for that reason, I would probably honestly agree. It's looking kind of like a D tier for me.
Awesome. Skits. So I'm thinking like Love Live Serve or like Smosh. Curious what you guys think about this one.
I think nowadays I would feel like skits fall into that short form content unless you're the best of the best or you have a large pre-existing audience who enjoy that kind of content. So I would put skits in a D tier, to be honest.
Lifestyle, we're thinking like Get Ready With Me vlogs. Honestly, I see a lot of girls watch this stuff. What do you guys think?
I mean, I like it. I think it's B tier. It's like kind of comfort stuff. You know, it's like 5 a.m. routine style stuff, come study with me style stuff, day in a lifestyle stuff. I think, you know, it's really unique. It's, you know, person dependent. The more unique your life, the better it is going to be for a video. Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's B. I think it's just really dependent on who you are as a person. So B.
Good with SF?
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I would also put it in B.
Fashion, I would throw in probably B, just because it's really similar to self-improvement.
Yeah, I think fashion's a good B one.
Okay, cool. ASMR. I don't know anything about ASMR. I consulted for one guy, and I think there's potential, but also it's very, very hard, I think, to actually do good stuff in ASMR. So for me, it's like honestly C or D, but what do you guys think?
The idea of listening to someone chew in my ears, there is nothing I can think of that could possibly be worse. I know there are some creators who have seen millions and millions of views from it, but I just can't get behind it. I know people like Pokimane and Amaranth have obviously been very successful, but that's not necessarily because their content was stellar. It was more because of their fan bases and their appearance. I can't speak with authority on it, but I hate it.
It seems like it's low barrier to entry, but high competition, which is like arguably a terrible, like just that's a terrible formula.
Yeah, I throw it in F simply because of the monetization. Live streams, what do you guys think? Honestly, I hated streaming when I did a bit of streaming when I was in game dev. I think there's good combinations with some of this other stuff, but for me, honestly, C or B, just because they're very easy to do and there's a lot of potential to be creative with them, combining any of these other niches with said live streams and then cutting them up for highlights. So for me, it's like a B probably.
On the stream highlights, I have a pet peeve with them because they, like you said, they're very easy, but they're also incredibly lazy.
Yeah.
And especially in gaming, people will just kind of re-upload games without any purpose. There's no concept, there's no ideation. It's them telling an editor to cut up a game where they got 20 kills and make that into a YouTube video, and then they kind of wonder why their channels aren't performing. So I think from that perspective, it could be beneficial to live stream on YouTube for 3 hours and then have a custom thumbnail made for it, update the title so it's something that will stand out on a homepage, and then kind of run with it.
For me, there's a lot of potential here, honestly. To have a stream, that's your content. You don't have to have a script. It's very organic. You're integrating with chat. That's where I'm disagreeing. I would throw it, honestly, in B, but I do see what you're saying in regards to, you know, the other stuff.
I like it a lot, actually. So I actually ran I ran a conglomerate of these like kind of live stream channels, and I had one that was doing very successful. With 4,000 subscribers, we were making anywhere between $4,000 and $8,000 a month. So I mean, it is lazy, it is low effort, but there is a lot of high upside. I mean, I'm not going to shy away from the fact that I did it, and I do plan to do it in the future because it's just too good. So for that reason, I'd say it's probably B. You know, you might not be able to do it for long, but I mean, hey, just exploit the fact that you can do it at all.
So next, documentaries. We're thinking like Sunny V2. For me, I would put it in, it's a tough one because to edit a documentary style video and be up there with the best, it's going to take you more than a week unless you have a team of editors working on it, or you're like crazy fast and aren't doing other stuff yourself. The advantage you do have though is there's a lot of topics to make videos about. So honestly, I'm probably in the middle, like C, if not B, because if there's a, you know, very, very high view ceiling there.
I agree with you in the sense that the production side is definitely not only a time investment, but also a capital investment. And it's kind of hard to avoid that regardless. But I think documentaries in some cases rely more on the ideation, get you viewership without that kind of higher level of editing. But overall, I would say if you want consistent views and you're not coming up with these amazing ideas weekly, then like I said, I would probably put it in, I would put it in B personally.
Sure. Yeah, we'll throw it in A, right in the middle. Next, reactions. What do you guys think?
I disagree in the 99% of React channels are incredibly low effort. I would always suggest most creators to make a React channel just because it's so low lift to begin with, and it has the potential to get a lot of views depending on what you're reacting to. So yeah, I would also put it in B.
I think it's really good if you already have a pre-established audience, and then from there you can kind of turn that into a React audience as well, transition them over. I think it's definitely low effort content to make, which is really good if you want a lot of it.
Last but not least, podcasts. Curious what you guys think about this.
I like podcasts. I work with a podcast channel. I worked with a few podcast channels. Definitely, again, is really dependent on who you are and your guests primarily and the topics.
I think it's extremely hard to create a brand, especially with long form. But I think, as you've probably seen with TikTok, there's a new podcast of 5 friends making a polarizing or going over a polarizing topic, and they can go viral. But that's only short form, and it's very hard to build a brand with any longevity in the long form side of things. So I would probably put that in C.
I would love to have one of those like fresh and fit podcasts, bring in, except with like YouTube gurus. So I bring in like 3 other YouTube gurus, then have an entire table of OnlyFans women and not debate the morality of OnlyFans, but only debate like the different social media platforms. I think it would be very interesting, very degenerate. We could throw the Sigma male music, cut it up with some shorts. But other than that, honestly, like, agree with you guys. To be honest, even if you don't have crazy authority in your niche, you can always leverage other people's if A, you're good at talking, and B, if you have a very good network. There you have it. The official tier list of YouTube niches in 2024. If you disagree with us, let us know in the comments, but we'll just tell you how wrong you are. So have fun there.